Sakura the succubus from Monster, and you're watching Disaster Files on the Hayden Hansen Company channel.
Hi, I am Hayden.
And hi, I'm David. Now, all right, imagine this. It's the early 1930s and you're in China. The country is already going through a rough patch, political turmoil, civil unrest. Let's just throw in the Great Depression for good measure. You think, okay, this has got to be the worst of it, right?
You'd hope, but Mother Nature always has a way of saying, hold my beer.
Exactly. And what she served up in 1931 was one of the worst natural disasters in recorded history, the 1931 China floods. A flood so devastating, it makes Noah's Ark sound like a kiddie pool.
I feel like we've covered a lot of disasters on this show, but this one, how come no one talks about it?
Well, that's because a lot of tragic events, history has a habit of sweeping things under the rug. But today, we're going to take that rug, throw it out, and dig deep into how the flood claimed millions of lives. Are you ready?
Oh man, I'm already regretting asking about this.
Well, the calm before the storm. So, let's set the scene. China, 1930. Winter rolls around and brings with it a lot of snow and ice. More than usual. People are going about their daily lives, just dealing with the cold. No big deal, right?
That's what winter does, right? Little chilly, some snow days, throw a few snowballs seems innocent.
But here's where things start to go wrong. In early 1931, the temperatures rise quickly. All that snow and ice starts to melt, and suddenly there's a lot more water than everyone planned for. The rivers, especially the big ones, Yangtze, Yellow, and Huai, all start to swell. And you're thinking, okay, that might not be too bad. We've had floods before.
Yeah, a little flood. Maybe a boat ride. Could be fun.
Not this time, buddy. By the time spring rolls around, it's not just a little overflow. It's the kind of thing that would make even Kevin Costner in Waterworld go, whoa, this is too much water.
That movie was practically a documentary about too much water.
And then came the rain. And when I say rain, I don't mean a few downpours. I'm talking biblical, like cue the giant boat and pairs of animals kind of rain. Central China experienced one of the wettest monsoon seasons in history. Between June and August 1931, it was like the sky just opened up and dumped the ocean on the land.
Let me guess. The rivers were already over their limit at this point.
Oh yeah. By July, the rivers were bursting at the seams. The Yangtze, the Yellow, and the Huai rivers were completely overwhelmed. But that wasn't even the worst part.
Wait, how can it get worse?
Throw a tropical cyclone into the mix. Because, why not?
This sounds like a sequel that nobody wanted, and I didn't even want the first one.
In June 1931, a tropical cyclone made the land fall in the region, adding even more water to an already overflowing disaster. So imagine, you got rivers filled to the brim with snowmelt and torrential monsoon rain. And now a cyclone just dumps more water in, like it's a sick joke.
I mean, at this point, it sounds like the universe just hated China.
Floodmageddon. By August 1931, the floodwaters are completely out of control. Imagine the rivers, huge, powerful rivers, suddenly spilling out of their banks, flooding everything for miles. Entire cities, towns, and villages, gone. Just wiped off the face of the map.
All right, so let's put this into perspective. Like, how big are we talking? A few blocks? A couple of square miles?
Oh, Hayden. Sweet, innocent Hayden. We're talking about an area the size of England, maybe even bigger. This flood covered over 600,000 square kilometres, about 230,000 square miles. To put it simply, it was like central China turned into one giant lake.
A lake? You're telling me an area that big was just gone?
Yep. In some places, the floodwaters were up to 50 feet high. Wuhan, for example, was hit with 53 feet of water.
That's like submerging a 5-story building. You'd have people living on rooftops or just...
Or just being washed away. I mean, entire communities were literally erased. At the height of the flooding, boats were on their way to get around. This wasn't just a flood. It was a whole new geography.
Wait, you mean like with better infrastructure?
Theories. Could it have been prevented? Now, here's where the disaster part comes in. Could this disaster have been prevented?
Wait, you mean like with better infrastructure?
Exactly. China had a history of flooding, especially along the Yangtze and Yellow rivers, but they didn't have the kind of robust flood control systems we see today. Dikes and levees were built, but they were basically held together with hopes and prayers. A lot of them were made out of dirt, not concrete. So when the floodwaters came, they just collapsed.
So they were using band-aids to hold back an ocean?
Pretty much. And some historians believe that if China had better flood management, a disaster on this scale could have been prevented, or at least minimized.
I can see that. I mean, we have levees now, and they still fail sometimes. But back then, without modern engineering, it's like trying to stop a fire with a water gun.
That's right. There's another theory that the political situation at the time made things worse. China was dealing with a lot. Civil war, shifting governments, so flood control wasn't exactly the top priority.
So basically, it was a perfect storm. Political chaos, weak infrastructure, and a ridiculously bad monsoon season.
Yep, and the results were catastrophic. The aftermath, famine, disease, and despair. Once the floodwaters started to recede, you'd think things would get better. But nope, they actually got worse.
How is that even possible?
Well, because when the waters finally pulled back, what was left behind was a wasteland. Farmland was completely destroyed. Crops? Gone. So people had no food. And when there's no food, you get famine. We're talking millions. People struggling to survive. It got so bad that people were eating grass, tree bark, and reportedly, some even turned to cannibalism.
Okay, that escalated fast.
Yep, it's pretty horrifying. But that wasn't the only problem. The stagnant water left behind the flood became a breeding ground for diseases. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, you name it. Without clean water or proper sanitization, disease spread like wildfire.
So, not only were people starving, but now they're getting sick?
Exactly, the death toll. So let's talk about the numbers. How many people died in the 1931 China floods? The short answer? We don't know for sure.
I feel like I'm not going to like the long answer either.
Yeah, you're not. Estimates for the death toll range from 1 million to 4 million people. And here's why it's hard to pin down. Record keeping wasn't exactly great back then, especially during a disaster of this scale. People drowned, starved, or died from diseases. And many of those deaths went unreported.
So, 4 million people could have died, and we might not even know?
Yep. Some estimates even suggest the death toll could have been even higher. But most historians agree that at least 2 million people perished, making it the deadliest natural disaster of the 20th century, and possibly the deadliest in human history.
That's more than the population of some countries today. I mean, we're talking millions of people just gone.
Yeah, it's unimaginable, and yet it's largely forgotten.
Okay, but here's what's bugging me how come this isn't common knowledge. I mean, we hear about hurricanes, earthquakes, and even things like the Titanic all the time, but this?
Good question. I think it's a combination of things. The world was going through so many crises at the same time. The Great Depression was hitting everywhere. World War II was just around the corner, and disasters like the 1931 floods often get overshadowed by immediate political and social issues.
I guess people were focused on surviving their day-to-day struggles instead of remembering a flood from years ago.
Exactly. It's like when we watch The Walking Dead and we get caught up in the drama, but forget the apocalypse means people are dying every day. It's easy to lose sight of the real horror when you're just trying to survive.
So, it's a mix of human forgetfulness and the chaos of the times.
That's it. It's also possible that the sheer scale of disaster was just too overwhelming for people to comprehend. Think about it. How do you process millions of deaths? The legacy of the flood. So what's the legacy in the 1931 China floods? The disaster led to significant changes in flood management practices in China, including the establishment of better levees and flood control systems. But it's also a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we are to nature's wrath.
So, it's a mix of human forgetfulness and the chaos of the times, and how it can wipe out entire communities in a blink. Makes you think about all those apocalyptic movies we love, or they're entertaining, but they're also based on real fears.
Right? And it's so wild to think that we're still facing these kind of threats today. Extreme weather. History is a way of repeating itself if we don't learn from it.
So, every time there's a flood warning or hurricane watch, we should probably take it seriously.
Definitely. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that disasters can strike when you least expect them. And they can have devastating consequences, just like in 1931.
Well, there you have it. The 1931 China floods, a disaster so massive that it deserves to be remembered, even if the world has mostly forgotten it.
What disaster do you want to see next? Comment below.